So we are just 1 minute past. I think now would be a good time for us to jump into today's session. So today we are doing the Feynman technique of learning with Möbius. And before I kind of jump into who we are at DigitalEd, your presenters today is myself. I am Rebecca Murphy. I lead the European sales operations here at DigitalEd. I'm also joined by my colleague Lachlan, and he is part of our customer success team, and he's going to be going through the details of today's session. If you do post any questions, you might notice some of our team members either responding to you live or putting a few updates in there. Like I said, we are doing Q&A at the end, so we will try and get through as many of the questions as possible that come through today as well. So let's jump in. Who is DigitalEd, and why are we here today presenting you with this webinar? So we are a software provider. We have employees and customers are based all around the world. Our head office is actually based in Canada, but we do have satellite teams and partners that operate across the globe. As you can see from this slide, we work with around 300 institutions, actually a few more than that, and they use our platform, our online platform called Mbius. Mbius is designed to allow academics, specifically within the higher ed space, to create and deploy online courses. It's really, really strong in STEM subjects, and the reason for that is that behind the scenes is a really great world-class math engine, meaning we can create really unique and complex question types. At the moment, adoption of Mbius has never been easier. If you've joined any of our previous sessions, we did one recently about our content packs, which are fully editable and allow for really, really quick deployment as well. So through Mbius, we reach around 440,000 students, and to date we've done in excess of 17 million automatically graded assignments. So I suppose that's enough about us, and let's kind of jump into the details of today's session and why you've joined us. So at this point, I am going to pass over to my colleague Lachlan.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rebecca, and thanks everyone for joining, whatever time of the day it is. Yeah, recently or semi-recently, I've had a few ideas about Richard Feynman. And some of his ideas about helping students to understand complex subjects. And I thought, now that we've got, nice new technology such as Möbius, what interplay is there? How can we utilize those brilliant ideas in the here and now in the modern world? So these are roughly the ideas I'm going to talk about: the man himself, the problems students face, the solution, Richard Feynman's technique of learning and understanding things, and how those things combine. So first, the man himself, Richard Feynman. Some of you may or may not have heard of him. I think his name has gone pretty far and wide, but just to kind of give you a reminder, he was a brilliant physicist, one of the best scientists of the 20th century. I'm sure many people would agree with that. Achieved lots and lots of wonderful things. So, he fixed the infinities in quantum electrodynamics. He had brilliant ideas in other areas of quantum theory. And he also kicked off a few areas as well. So quantum computing, nanotechnology. He contributed in the very, very early stages to some of these fields. I also put in the Manhattan Project there. Of course, William Younger did contribute to that, slightly controversially, but it was something that he did do. So that's there too. So we know Richard Feynman as a very intelligent person, was a very intelligent person, but why was he so intelligent? What was it specifically about him that led him to be able to figure all these things out, and to be such a good scientist, such a good thinker? What was it? So I don't think, and I think if he was alive, I don't think he would say that he was naturally intelligent. If you compare, say, the point in his childhood where he learned how to speak is relatively later, it's about the age of 3 years old where he learned how to do it. So I don't think he would agree that he was naturally intelligent. I don't think he really believed in natural intelligence. So what was it then? So I believe, and based on the stories that he's given of his life, it was to do with his upbringing. So primarily to do with his father. His father wanted him to be a scientist, and his father taught him to think in a certain way, taught him to try to understand things in a certain way, to experiment with ideas and concepts, both mentally and physically, with actual physical experiments, to play around with things, to enjoy understanding, to enjoy learning, and really to tackle and explore things in an enjoyable way in order to understand them. And that's really the primary thing here. And with all this, with the fun and the playful side, is failure is not such an important thing. Failure is just the first step to understanding things. And when you do fail, it opens up more questions, more avenues of investigation for you to really understand something. So I believe, at least, that part of the reason why Feynman was such a successful person was just his outlook on life, nothing to do with natural intelligence or anything like this. So he was someone who also, as well as contributing to these fields, he loves to explain things to people. He was a brilliant communicator. Many students, many people, adored his lectures and the way and style that he would explain things. He would always encourage students not to just remember facts and figures and remember definitions and big words and remember derivations and things, but to understand them and to think for themselves, and to approach learning with the scientific method itself in mind. So, as part of this, as part of his involvement in the education space, if you like, he was invited, or at least he invited himself along to several teaching associations and people would ask him his opinion, or at the very least, he gave his opinion on what he thought about things. And he was trying to explain one time, and I think it's a good story, how the scientific or how science really came to be. So he kind of explained it like this. So at some point, life happened, right? A question for another time, but life happened at some point. And intelligent beings eventually happened at some point. So here, we've got a cat, and it learns how to do something. It learns how to play the bongos. So that's very impressive. A cat playing bongos, that would surely get many, many hits on YouTube. But unfortunately, Mr. Kitty here is going to go to heaven at some point. And, that's obviously sad, but it's a problem for Cat, Mr. Catman, and any other intelligent life, because this cat doesn't know how to pass on its knowledge. So once that cat goes, its knowledge of bongo playing goes with it. So eventually, you could say more complex life happened, or you could say intelligent life happened. Humans happen. And we invent ways to transfer knowledge. We invent music, we invent art, we invent the written words. We invent ways to keep knowledge going even after we've died. Okay. Now that's brilliant. As far as we know, that hadn't really happened before, at least in the history of Earth. It's amazing. The problem is not all knowledge is correct, right? Not all knowledge is correct. So in this little cartoon, someone's going blah, 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 blah. Some knowledge is true. Some knowledge is rubbish. So this is becoming more and more relevant, seemingly now in the modern era, with the advent of social media and fake news and conspiracy theories and all of this. Not all knowledge is true. Very important. Now, a long time ago, something happened. The Enlightenment period happened. People began to doubt knowledge. And this is the important thing. They knew not all knowledge was correct, and they doubted some of it. And they would try to test knowledge with experiments and theories, and trying to match experiments to theories and adjusting the theory to meet the experimental evidence, and so forth, in an effort to discover what is true. And that is really, the birth of the scientific method, you could say, and the birth of science itself. So that was, a revolutionary thing. Now, Feynman really believed in all of these things. He really believed in it, and he really made it a part of his life. He used to keep a notebook around with him that was titled "Things I Don't Know About," and he would update that and take it seriously and try to figure things out about that. He would also kind of scorn at people who would just use big words and would just pretend to be smart without putting in the effort to truly understand some concepts or some ideas. And many people actually take inspiration from his ideas on this and from his outlook. So, for example, Bill Gates called him the greatest teacher he never had. Ended up purchasing the rights to several of his recorded lectures and just posted them on Microsoft.com for free. I'm sure if you search for that on the internet, you'll be able to see that. Elon Musk, of course, trained physicist as well as an engineer and business person, takes a lot of inspiration from Feynman. And, the idea is we would like in the world for there to be more people who try to understand things in the same kind of way as Feynman did, because then there would be more intelligent people out there, there'd be more people doubting and testing, and hopefully to the effect where the world would be a little bit better. I think you would all kind of agree with that sentiment. So let's just kind of explore, what's happening now. So what is the problem? So right now, obviously, we've got more people studying STEM subjects than at any point in human history. So that the general gist is, they've got sources of information, be that lectures in the physical world or now in the online world, be that books, be that YouTube videos, be that experimental data for people doing research, whatever. They've got sources of information. We're all students really here. Now, what are some of the problems with that? Well, if you're an actual student doing, say, an undergraduate course, sometimes you're not always going to be paying attention. You might not always engage. Sometimes you might try cramming things in the end, but some of these pitfalls that you'll make will get you bad marks, obviously, but some of them will actually also get you good marks, which is a little worrying as well, because you don't really understand something, but you might be able to, complete the exam and get a super top grade. So what are the pitfalls that people really fall into here? So the first one I've listed here is deception, right? So you've gone to the lecture, maybe you're kind of half listening, or maybe you are listening and you think you understand something. You're following the lecture, you think you understand something, the lecturer goes through some examples, you think, I understand those examples. Maybe you're even a good enough person to go home and try those examples for yourself, or maybe one or two others. You convince yourself, I understand it. You leave it alone until the exam comes up or until something important happens and you realize, oh wait, I don't understand it. So you haven't maybe spent enough time tearing the idea into pieces and looking at each little section and seeing individually how it works and then putting it all back together. You haven't spent enough time, maybe with examples, to the point where you get to something you don't know how to answer. You haven't spent enough time, basically. And you've deceived yourself into thinking that you do understand something and you don't. So that's a problem. So the next problem there is heuristics. So just, I want to get to this answer, so I do this, then I do this, then I do this, and then I'm at the answer. So that works fabulously for computers, for machine learning, and you can achieve a lot with that. But really, when it comes to trying to understand something new, to understand it as well, not to learn it, it's really a pitfall. So just because a process works in one situation doesn't mean it'll work in another situation. You could get, you could be way off, could be completely wrong, and you wouldn't even know it because you wouldn't understand the underlying ideas. You're just going for a cookbook recipe. So that's not great either. So the next thing on here, dictionaries, right? So Feynman was, he didn't like really people who used big words to mask their understanding of things. So there's that classic story, right? You know, little boy Richard Feynman, the kids are bullying him because he doesn't know the word or the name of this certain bird in a playground, right? And his dad tries to explain to him, you know, it doesn't matter. So, you know, the bird is called this in Spanish, it's called this in Italian, it's called this in French. It doesn't matter. It doesn't tell you anything about how or why the bird came to be there. Yeah, how does it fly? Why is it here at one point of the year and somewhere else at another point of the year? It doesn't tell you any of that. It's just a sound. The name of the word, the bird, it's just a sound people make to reference that. It doesn't tell you anything about how to understand the bird. And so the next and last thing here that I could think of was cramming. Of course, you know, it seems more and more popular now. I know I've been guilty of it at least once in the past, but if you're just trying to shove everything into your head as quickly as you can before an exam or, you know, an important event, it's not great. You're not really going to remember everything at a later date. You haven't really had enough time to understand the subject. And of course, it could lead you to do the other things as well. So it could lead you to learn heuristics because it's a shortcut. It could lead you to mask your understanding with big complicated words because it's a shortcut. And of course, you are deceiving yourself about what you understand as well. You must be deceiving yourself. So these are all bad things, obviously. And it leads to unhappy Richard Feynman. He wouldn't really want you to do any of this if you can help it. Not a good idea. So what is the kind of solution here then instead? So there is an idea that has been come to known as the Feynman technique, and it is roughly, it's just to be honest with yourself. In a few words, it's just to be honest with yourself. Do you understand this thing or not? If not, which bits, why? Go back to it and try to attack the problem again and again and again until you do. So in the same way, you know, we've got sources here, your lectures, books, videos, whatever it might be, experimental data. You want to study those sources. You want to do examples. You want to take the ideas into pieces, try to understand them individually and put them all back together. But you want to be able to try to condense things such that you could explain it to a toddler. Okay, so and this is something actually computer programmers do when they come up to a problem in their software, is they try to actually explain it to a rubber duck is the stereotype with this. But the whole idea is, if I'm trying to explain something to you and I start tripping over my words maybe, or I just blank on something, then I haven't understood something. You know, you don't know what you don't know, and trying to explain something helps you to realize what you don't know. And this is quite often, you know, where you're falling in your understanding and the bits that you need to kind of look at again. So if your toddler is making a confused face like this, you probably haven't understood something. So, you know, part of this, when you explain it, you want to use simple words, simple sentences, simple explanations, which is why we're trying to explain it to a toddler, because toddlers generally don't understand big words, big complicated explanations. So there's another story here with Feynman. So another one of these teacher association meetings that he was invited to, or invited himself to, however that worked. He was criticizing some questions that they were thinking about asking students. So this is kind of the advent of new math, as it was in America. And one of the questions was, it was only for, you know, high school students and less than that. You know, how does this mechanical toy dog work? Okay, and the textbook answer was energy. So that doesn't explain anything about the problem. It doesn't explain, you know, how the gears work and how the forces in those gears push along the teeth of the other gears and how that moves, you know, certain pins and how that relates to the motion of the wheels in the toy dog and how the toy dog moves. It doesn't explain any of that. You know, you may as well just say rainbows and candy. It's as good of an explanation as energy. It doesn't explain anything. So simplifying your explanations is important to get rid of, you know, stupidly long words that don't really mean anything. So really important. So already talked about that. Identify gaps in your understanding. Important. That's the whole point of explaining something. The next most important thing, or I suppose really the most important thing here, is to loop back. So when you don't understand something, when you've identified that you don't understand something, you need to go back to the sources, reread, do examples again, do new examples, find new sources of information, run new experiments, run the experiments again. You need to get more information and you need to examine it again and try to understand it again and repeat the process. So try to simplify what you've just learned to find any new holes in your understanding and go through this a number of times until you feel that you're in a place where you're comfortable, where you're comfortable with the ideas, you feel like you understand something, you can't see any holes in what you've understood so far. And when you're at that point, you need to just organize these ideas, this understanding, simplify, use analogies, just in an effort to hopefully remember this for another time when you might come up into a similar situation and can draw comparisons and hopefully solve the problem quicker. So these ideas, this is something Feynman would probably like. And fundamentally here, the main thing is this isn't fooling yourself. The main thing is honesty. So when you get to identify those gaps, go back to the source, be honest. Don't just go, yeah, I understand, see you later. So Richard Feynman, you know, and another one of these teaching conventions, he was saying something along the lines of, you know, you are the easiest person to fool. And once you get over that, once you stop trying to fool yourself, then you can make progress. So these are really the ideas that we're trying to imbue on students. And, you know, some students will just do this, whether or not they know it's the Feynman technique, they'll just do it. And they'll be excellent students and they'll go on to do many great things. But some people won't do this. And, you know, you can almost say that a marker of intelligence is laziness, right, in some way. You know, maybe that's a talk for another day. But we want to encourage those students who wouldn't do this naturally to do it. So how can we do that? So, I mean, normally, you know, university is kind of where you need to learn to think for yourself. So we need to encourage people to do that. So one of the things that we can do is we can utilize new technology, you know, such as Möbius, to kind of help with that. So in case you haven't heard of what Möbius is, I'll just briefly explain it. So it's an e-learning, e-assessment platform. You can do a lot of things with it. It is primarily geared towards STEM subjects, as Rebecca mentioned, and it is underpinned by a very powerful computational engine, which is Maple. You may or may not have heard of that. So it's got lots of useful things that we can use to try to get students on the right lines of thinking, learning, understanding. So fully randomized questions. So be that, you know, the variables in the questions, certain parameters, or, you know, certain equations in the questions, even the wording of the questions, you know, all randomizable. Very good. So it allows for the use of open-ended questions as well. So you see there, the middle left next to the logo, give any 2x2 matrix where the determinant of the matrix is 1. So there are many matrices that satisfy that constraint. I'm no mathematician, but I'd go ahead and say there are an infinite number of matrices that satisfy that constraint. So open-ended question right there, very useful to test knowledge and understanding. Fully customizable, so you can make any content that you can think of, but there is also out-of-the-box stuff as well to kind of get you going. There are interactive math apps, So better than a one-dimensional figure on a piece of paper, you get to interact and play around with concepts for yourself. And many other things as well. So embedded HTML apps and things like this, and essay questions, which we'll come on to as important. But ultimately, all of this great stuff is put into assignments and lessons, and that's what the student will interact with. So that's what Möbius is. Now, how can we transpose these ideas of the Feynman technique into a platform like Möbius? So, as I mentioned before, we've got sources. Everyone has sources of information. We transpose this into Möbius as lessons with all their interactivity and with embedded questions and things like this to test students. Now, in the examples, we had toddlers. Now, for the time being, it's quite difficult to get toddlers or rubber ducks into the internet in any kind of realized form. So we have to stick with essay questions, okay? This is what we're going to use for the students to explain what they think they understand about something we've just given them. And then we have truth, really. I've written knowledge identifiers there, but really truth and honesty with yourself. Now, this is the important thing, because you can just leave students alone and they'll go, yeah, I understand that, when they don't. So what we have in Möbius is assignments and questions with instant feedback. So they can test, pretty much straight away, this question, did I get it right or wrong? What was the answer, if you wish? And you could give them feedback on how to do the problem if you wish. Again, perhaps in this context, you wouldn't do that, but they're all things. That the main thing is right or wrong answer, instant feedback. So you're forcing them to be honest, whether or not they want to. So the next thing there is loops. So even if they've gone through the source material, they've tried to explain it, they've gotten some honesty back into their understanding, they can still go, yep, I understand it, and then just move on. We don't want them to do that. We want them to go back to the source. We want them to, take apart those ideas and redo them and go through things again. So we achieve that in Möbius with progression requirements, adaptive assignments. So what we call that in Möbius is actually so advanced policies, which I'll show you shortly. So those are the ideas. That's kind of how it works in theory. So a quick demonstration of that in practice. If I get out of there and go into here. So this is Möbius. I'm on a class homepage. It's a simple unit, which is like a theme of learning, if you like. Just on introduction to differentiation. So every STEM student should know this, should understand what a derivative is and so forth. Now, in my example student account, I've already gone through some simple stuff already, but let's look at some of the other things here. So I can look into a lesson, and I can resume because I did this earlier. And if my computer doesn't die, there we go. So I can have, this is my source. This is my source of information here. I've got, a little interactive math app here where I can play around with, the idea of the gradient between 2 points on a curved line. And I can play around with the idea of what if the separation between those points is 0? What does that mean? So I've got a tangent to a certain point here. And I can play around with different plots, and I can play with the idea, which is very important. I'm asked questions here, and I'm given the ability to answer questions as well and verify my understanding. So straight off the bat, I can see, did I understand this? Obviously, I didn't in this case. I'm not giving an answer, but I can be given more questions as I go, which, because I'm a terrible student, I'm just going to skip through just to show you what's going on here. So I'm constantly asked questions, I'm given more information, and of course I can go back, try another with new randomizations, or just start the thing all over again. So if I go out of that now, let's just say I wanted to skip ahead. I wanted to go to the next lesson, let's see, can I do it? No, I can't do it. I can't go to the next lesson. I haven't satisfied the requirements. I haven't passed the previous quiz. Very bad student. So I'm forced into a loop. I'm forced to evaluate my understanding of a subject before I can move on. So, maybe like other tech companies where people might be nudging advertisements on you, we are nudging students to evaluate their understanding and be critical about their understanding for this subject. So very briefly, I mentioned the use of the essay response areas, which I can't do because I haven't finished that lesson, but let's just cheat and get me in anyway, because I am the admin here. So let's just go on here. So obviously students can't do this, just me because I'm special. So an essay type areas, okay? So the idea is you've just given the students some source material, the lesson, they've had a chance to play around with it, to ask questions, to evaluate themselves. Now I want to give them a chance to think out loud, to condense those ideas, to talk to a toddler, to a rubber duck about what they think they've understood. So that's what that section is for. And then after that, if I move down, they have the ability to take a quiz. Okay, and this is the honesty. This is where, hard cold, are you right or you're wrong? We'll give you lots of different randomized type questions, maybe even using different notation. And we want to test your understanding. And if you don't get this right, sorry, but you are going to need to go back to that source material and to reevaluate your understanding. So that's pretty much the setup. That's pretty much all the ideas that I had for this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, wherever you are. So yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Hi, Lachlan. We have had one come through. This is from Alex. It says, when creating lessons, can we perhaps ask the student if they score less than 50% in the result to revisit the previous lecture or lesson, and therefore automatically sending them back to the source?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So you could create separate lessons as well. So if a student, say, fails an assignment based on whatever failure criteria you want to give, you could give them more source material, or you could give them the same source material, but slightly differently, say. So they're not having to look at the same thing. So they're getting different pieces of source information. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I've got a question here from Dan as well. Do you see Möbius as a course management system in addition to being a learning platform?
Not really. So there are things out there like Canvas and Blackboard, and I think classically you would say they are course management systems, and Möbius is a tool that can be used in those course management systems. So it connects through some technology called LTI. We won't go into the details about it, but I would say Möbius is a learning and assessment platform, and a course management system would be something like Canvas or Blackboard.
Okay, perfect. I think we've just got a couple of the rest. So somebody's asked if the slides will be available to download. We are sending a copy of a recording out after this, so you will be able to see them. If you do want the specific slide deck to use it again, if you could reach out to us independently, then we can obviously take a look at that for you, and we'll, depending on what you want to use it for, obviously we can chat through that. Someone has also asked here to say, what is the process of reviewing Möbius and potentially adopting it? Is there a specific textbook that Möbius is using? So sorry, there's kind of two questions in this. Let's do the first one. What is the process of reviewing Möbius and adopting it? So actually, it's probably best if I kind of answer that one.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where this person is from, unfortunately, because I can only see the name, I can't see the institution. But the process of reviewing Möbius is you get in touch with one of our teams, one of our sales teams. So I look after the European region. I've got a colleague, Stacey, who looks after the UK. We've also got teams in North America and around the world. So after the session, reach out to us. And then what we would do from there is we would have a individual conversation, most likely over Zoom. We talk about how you currently deliver your lessons, what your digital learning plan looks like, where through that journey you might be. We can then also have the ability to provide evaluations. So very similar to what Lachlan just did there, we can give you a login so you can experience Möbius yourself as if you were a student. You can interact with some content, you can look at the questions. We can go even further than that. If you were interested in looking more as an author, we can organise pilots, and then the conversation just naturally progresses from there. If you do need to have it up and running really quickly, then we can also talk about the different content packs that are available. And the second part of that question is there a textbook that Möbius is using? And the answer to that is we're not signed into a specific textbook. So our academics and our authors have the ability to build content from scratch. So from the first letter and the first word, you can put whatever you like. The reason that it's so good for STEM subjects is there are a variety of different question types that are really good for helping to embed and encourage that learning. So Lachlan showed you some of that in today's session. Our pre-made content is aligned to various textbooks. So we do have basically online versions of textbooks available as well. So if you are currently working from a curriculum or a syllabus, what you can do is you can reach out to us and we can map to say, okay, this is the content that we have that's currently available that you can use and adopt to deliver your course. Like what I was saying before is that the content packs themselves are fully tailorable. So you can pick and mix down to a specific question, down to a specific phrase if you like. So it may be that you deliver some textbook courses, and then it may be that actually sometimes they're really bespoke and you want to create them from scratch, but you really like a piece of content in one of our content packs. It's designed to be able to give you full autonomy over the courses you deliver them and how you deliver them. Okay, so there's another one here from Marjorie as well. What happens when a student does not pass a lesson or quiz after multiple attempts and they have become potentially unengaged and give up? Do they go into endless looping, or can we put a set number of attempts in there?
Yeah, so you can specify a number of attempts. And this is, I mean, one of the great things about Möbius is you can really kind of customize these things to be however you want. So in this particular idea, that the Feynman method, the whole idea is you want to loop through, going between trying to explain something, going to the source and asking questions in between. And really you only want progression once they've understood something to whatever level you wish, right? Which you can specify with a pass grade or a number of attempts on something. But you don't have to do things like that. Yeah, you are free to remove those advanced policies and let people go through in a more natural, you might say, way. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I do have another one here. So this is from Marcus. Do you recommend using Möbius for time-critical final exams or high-stake exams?
Yeah, so there are students, and we do have, quite a few universities that will use Möbius for high stakes exams or for, continual assessment, however you might want to call it. Yeah, so we've already got customers that do that.
Yeah, and just to add to that point, obviously in the world as it is at the moment, there is a lot of conversation around proctoring. Möbius does have some proctoring capabilities built into it as well to help kind of aid if you do want to provide that more controlled environment. And that might be that they need to have a certain login details, they need to request to have login. We can have various different requirements as well. So if that's something that you want to know more about, please just reach out to us as well on that one. I think there were a few other questions, but the team have answered them potentially individually if they were really specific to a person. Let's have a quick look. So Steve has put here saying this would be a good opportunity to explain some of the metadata that can be mined from Möbius, and that where it can help instructors to have the ability to identify students that may require extra help, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we can have another talk about that another time. But yeah, we do have metadata that goes from Möbius to Google Analytics, basically. So you can look at, when students are engaging with material, how often are they spending time on lessons as opposed to assignments, and, when are they going back to things? And you can use that to say, what about my course on Möbius might need changing or improving or removing, and how are the students responding to it? Are there any particular students that I might need to actively go out and talk to? Yeah.
Perfect. And the last one I've got here, so I'm saying that these last ones, I realise I said that was the last one last time. Please just keep popping them through if there is anything else that you want us to go through today. I do realise we have gone over a bit of the time. It was a really great session as well, so we still have a bit of time available if people do still have questions. Again, we will be sending a recording. So I'm going to say this is the last question, but if you have got some thoughts on your mind and you want to put them up, please just pop them in the Q&A or in the chat. So this is from Alex. From a teacher's perspective, what can you do to monitor your students' progress? And I think you kind of went into analytics a little bit on this one.
Yeah, so there is the metadata that gets sent out, and that can inform you of some kind of interesting things to kind of inform you about how you might want to change your course or who you might want to talk to that isn't maybe talking to you. But there is of course a conventional grade book in Möbius. That will say, what progress students are making, if they've passed something, how far they've got into the course, how many times they've attempted something, how much time they've spent on something. So there is all that kind of stuff in Möbius off the bat. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lachlan. Okay, so I think we've answered all the questions that everybody had. Like I said, most of them were done by either myself or Lachlan, but there were a few that kind of some of our team in the background have answered as well. So just to kind of wrap up today, thank you again for joining us. Some of you may have already joined a few of our previous sessions, and we continue we're going to continue to put these on in the future. We've had obviously amazing engagement today and some brilliant, insightful questions as well. Lachlan, thank you so much for providing us the insight as well. And yes, so those of you who have attended or are watching the recording, please keep an eye out because we will be doing follow-up sessions in terms of more demonstrations, more wider topics like this, more specifics about Möbius. We welcome any feedback on today's session, or if there's a topic that is really hitting home in your space in higher ed or in STEM or in digital learning that you think would be a great thing for us to cover, please just reach out to us as well, because we want to keep adding to these series. They're really fun for us to make, and we're finding that people are really engaging with them as well. So we hope that you've had that same experience today. If you do have any further questions, you can go to our website as well, which is digitaled.com. It is in the chat box, but you can find us on there. All of our contact details are on the website as well. And within the next couple of days, we will be sending you a recording. Perfect. Well, thank you again, everybody from around the world. Enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening. And yes, look out for some more of our sessions in the future. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.